Yeah. I'm here today with Sebastian Davila from Davila and DeFusco Insurance Agency. We're going to talk about things that you might want to consider when you're getting insurance. So, Sebastian, why don't you just tell me a little bit about yourself?
Davila and DeFusco, we're a family agency. We started in 2014. We're a pretty good size for an agency. You know, we've been around for a while. We're big in the Spanish community, and we just opened up a new office in Peabody as well.
Okay. And where's your original office located?
Methuen.
Methuen
Yeah.
and Peabody.
Yeah.
So you have Spanish-speaking agents there.
We do have Spanish-speaking agents. Yep, and I speak Spanish as well. And then in Peabody, we have there's a big Brazilian community there. So now we have a new employee, and she speaks Portuguese. So we're trying to get some more Portuguese-speaking customers.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we're licensed in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, by the way.
Excellent. Okay. Good to know. So let's just dive right in here. The first question I have is, what is the purpose of getting home insurance?
Yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question. Obviously, people buy home insurance to feel safe, to be able to sleep at night. Whether it's home, auto, or business, you want to make sure the asset that you have is protected.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really about having that, the comfort level of risk that you're, whatever level of risk that you're comfortable with. And you want to make sure that you're covered, to value, that, no part of what you're trying to cover goes uninsured, but also for a reasonable price. As everybody knows, insurance, it can be costly these days.
Okay.
Finding a good price is crucial, a good rate, and just making sure you're fully insured, as there's, can be penalties if you don't fully insure whatever you're looking to insure. Yeah, it's really about safety though.
That means, like, say, if there was a loss due to a fire, and say it's a complete loss, you'd be able to rebuild the home, correct?
Exactly. It is the cost to rebuild.
Okay.
Well, a lot of people will come and say, "Hey, I bought my house for 700,000, but you're only insuring me for 500,000." And I kind of have to have the conversation a lot that, the insurance doesn't cover the land, and it's not the same as market value. It's the replacement cost value of your home. It's solely the cost.
And in most cases, you're not going to lose the land. The value of the land is always going to be there during a catastrophe.
Exactly. Unless there was like a meteor, you're usually going to be fine.
Do you cover meteors?
No, we don't cover meteors. No, that's going to be a separate line. You'd have to go elsewhere for that risk.
Okay. Next question. What kind of insurance coverage do I need for a home I purchase? And I think we should point out that a bank is going to require that you have proper home insurance before they lend a home. That's the first thing. So what is the bank going to look for, and what do you need to provide so that the bank is happy with the insurance coverage?
Yeah, I mean, basically the insurance agent is usually going to run a replacement cost value on the home. Basically just putting in all the details about the home into the company that they're quoting with to determine the value of the home that company, wants to cover the home for. The loan officer or the bank is usually going to require that the home is insured to value, as they want to protect that asset. So you guys are basically both getting exactly what you want. The bank is covering the asset for what it's worth, and then also the asset that you're buying is going to be covered for what it's worth. What you want to be careful of is if you don't have a loan, then the bank isn't going to be there to look out for you, but they really just want to cover their end. So that's kind of why they do it. But you guys are basically have the same interests.
Yeah. Well, I think there's 2 points to be made here. One is worse than not making your loan payment is to have a total loss and not have insurance on the property, for the bank at least, and also actually unpaid taxes, because that's the super lien and supersedes the mortgage. So the bank is going to ask you to escrow the insurance money so that the next time the payment comes along, the money is there in an escrow at the bank to be paid. And again, they don't want a total loss of the property because that's actually worse than you not paying your monthly mortgage.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
a lot of people don't really even know that they have control over their, their home insurance. They think, oh, my bank set that up. I don't have any control over that, but you do have control over it. It's your policy. The bank,
Mhm.
you're paying for it and it's in your name. It's you own the policy. You can make decisions on it. And, we have a lot of customers. So we're an independent agency. So we quote with a bunch of different companies. And as different companies have different risk profiles. And if one company raises their rates for that year for a specific type of property, say a two-family, you have a
Yeah.
two-family,
Yeah.
your policy could go up a lot, and the escrow, the bank will just keep paying for the insurance. It's your job to be like, hey, this isn't a fair price. I need to requote this. At our agency, we stay on top of these increases and we'll requote with another company if something doesn't look right. But it's really up to you to, to make that decision and to review your policy and make sure that, you're getting a fair deal.
So the next question, which we've sort of covered, is home insurance mandatory when buying a home? And you've kind of already covered that, which is one, it's not mandatory if you're paying cash, though it is wise to
Yes.
have insurance to make sure you're covered.
Mhm.
And two, if you're getting a loan, you're going to be required to get home insurance. So in that aspect, it is mandatory. So I already kind of answered these questions, but I
Yeah.
just wanted to recap that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why a lot of, people will look into buying a beachfront property. And when they find out how much, the home insurance or the flood insurance can be, that can kind of sometimes kill the deal as, they might not be able to afford the insurance and they have a mortgage that is requiring it.
The next question is, how much coverage should I get for my home versus what a bank will require to lend me money for a mortgage? I mean, is there ever a case where you might want to insure more than the mortgage requires?
Yeah, definitely. Both cases are true. You can have a house in Boston that's worth $1 million, but maybe is only worth $400,000 to rebuild. But the market value over there is very high. And then you could have another home, say in rural New Hampshire, that is, it's going for really cheap, maybe 200. Cheap is relative, but 200,000, maybe it's going for market value or 300,000, and the replacement cost is basically either that or it couldn't even be more. It could be a
Okay.
big house that could cost more than the market value will actually be.
So we talked about getting home insurance, when you're buying a home. But I think it's important that the next question is, what is covered by home insurance and what is not?
Yeah, I mean, some of the most common losses that are can covered and that are uncovered are going to be fire, which is basically why homeowners insurance was invented, was to cover
Okay.
fire losses because it's the most common and they're the most substantial. That is covered.
Okay.
Something that generally not be covered is flood, just because a flood can wipe out thousands of houses at once. So the companies usually don't want to take on that risk, but you can always buy flood insurance yourself. And if you're not in a flood zone, if you are in a flood zone, it is required. If you're not in a flood zone, it can actually be pretty affordable and maybe worth doing if you're maybe close to a flood zone. And anybody can check where they are where the flood zone is by going to it's FEMA.gov, I think it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
FEMA.
Most realtors have access to that now too.
Exactly,
So we
exactly.
can at least look. So when we're talking about a basement flooding is in doing some damage to say a family room in the basement, is that considered a flood? Would that be covered or is that different?
Yeah, I mean, what an insurance policy is usually going to cover is a catastrophic event that couldn't really be avoided. So, and then in flood kind of falls in that category of that. However, they do specifically exclude it because the losses can be huge, and then everybody would be paying a lot of money for their home insurance to cover, maybe homes that are higher risk, you know.
So down in Florida, we just had some major things going on. Would a hurricane be covered? Would a tornado be covered?
Yeah, I mean, those are generally covered on a house maybe around here, around where I'm at, Methuen. Definitely will be covered on under 99% of policies. If you have more of a coastal home, they could have deductibles, 2% storm deductible, which, is 2% of the replacement cost. So you can have a huge deductible, which will basically come out of, how much they're going to pay you if there was a loss.
What about say wildfires? I mean, we're having some here right now, but that wipe out whole towns, and would that be covered?
Yeah, that would definitely be covered. Fire
Okay.
is most definitely covered. When there starts to be wildfires, I have some companies that have recently just said to me, like, don't issue anything in, the Salem area, Salem, Massachusetts, because there are wildfires there. So, sometimes they'll put a block on that. They don't want you, seeing a risk happening and buying insurance for that specific risk. But if you have insurance already, yes, that is definitely included. That's one of
Are
the
there
main.
other things that might not be covered with your normal policy you would get to satisfy the mortgage company?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely tons of add-on coverages, and it's really about what kind of thing you have. Some major ones are, if you run a daycare out of your property, if you run any type of business out of your property, that's not going to be covered under your liability under your policy.
Okay.
Some property damage stuff is, service lines. If your service lines get damaged, it's not going to be covered unless you have service line coverage. Water damage is kind of a heavy one where there's a lot of pipe bursts, but it depends on where the pipe bursts. If the pipe bursts in your house, you're usually going to be covered as long as it wasn't an obvious risk beforehand that you knew about. But if there's rising water from, say, the town,
Yeah.
that's usually excluded because it didn't happen on the property. So water damage is kind of a confusing one, but yeah.
And as a insurance agent, this is something that you go over with someone when they're looking to get an insurance policy.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, anything, I always ask, if you have a dog, if you have a trampoline, if you have a daycare, if you have a business, these are all things that can can influence the price, but you also don't want.
Right. I mean, I've run into issues with buyers who had high risk dogs like pit bulls and things like that. And while insurable, they went to a pool and the insurance was like incredible. I mean, it was several $1,000s a year,
Yeah.
a couple $1,000s a year to insure like a pit bull or a high risk dog. So a dog does add to your insurance policy.
Yeah. I mean, a regular, your typical dog will not, but a pit bull or a Rottweiler or something of, there's a list of certain dog breeds that are typically excluded. You're not going to do yourself any justice if you try to sneak that by the insurance company because you want a company that it's high risk for a reason. You don't want something to happen. You get sued for $1 million because, your dog got, off the leash or something and something happened. And they were like, well, that's excluded. The insurance company is never really going to lose because if you snuck something by them, they're going to say, well, did you read page 10? We said we weren't going to, insure them.
Correct.
You
So
really want to.
that's not a pet.
Yeah, it's not even really an add-on. It's more just like it limits where we can place it. But this is this type of thing that you just want to be very transparent with your agent and
Okay.
tell them everything. Because as long as you told them, it's on them to make sure that they put it in the right place, or that could be a error in omission claim for them.
So that brings me to a couple things. So if the dog bites someone off the property, is that covered?
Yes.
And what about, say, a salesman is coming down your driveway to knock on your door and try to sell you something, and they slip and fall on some ice? Would that be covered?
If you have the liability insurance, they will definitely be covered. There's some crazy, crazy extraordinary cases that, you wouldn't even believe the coverages that are available. If you are on a golf course and you hit a golf ball and hit somebody, that's going to be covered under your homeowner's insurance because, personal liability, it wasn't malicious. If you have, you're having a party and somebody drives home drunk and hits somebody, that could be covered under your homeowner's insurance. Any type of personal liability can be covered as long as it's not, malicious. If you're a murderer or something, that's not going to be covered under your homeowner's insurance because, it
Is there
wasn't
an add-on for that? And then let's talk about like contents of the house, like your furniture and belongings. What would that be covered, or is that something that you need to talk about with your agent?
Yeah, I mean, it's usually included on a policy, and it's usually a percentage of the dwelling, as they are usually somewhat related. If you have an expensive house, you may have expensive things inside. But if you have extraordinary things like a jewelry collection or an art collection, you really need to disclose that with your agent so they can add it to the policy. But generally, yes, it should be covered as long as the amount looks good to you. As long as the amount, you say, yeah, I guess I would have about $100,000 in personal property.
So we've talked about a few things here, but what other things might affect your insurance premium? I know credit score can affect your insurance premium, but what other things might affect your insurance premium?
Yeah, prior claims could affect, obviously, and if you have a claim, unfortunately, people always complain, oh, I can have insurance, but as soon as I have a claim, they don't want me anymore. And I mean, it's kind of just they're playing the odds game. If you have one claim, you're just much more likely to have another claim as a risk profile. It's
So
more,
if they see a history of claims, you're going to pay a higher insurance premium.
yes, definitely. Or again, it'll limit where we can place you. And, the only place that we could place you is going to be more expensive.
And people think of credit score and like getting a mortgage and things like that. But credit score also affects your home insurance, correct?
It can affect the price of the home insurance. Yep,
Right.
it definitely can.
Are there some other things that might affect the premiums that you might not be aware of?
Off the top of my head, maybe what discounts may or may not be on the policy. Like if you have an auto policy, maybe bundled with the same company.
We'll talk about that in a minute. That leads me to another question
Okay.
down here. So
Okay.
that's good to know.
Yeah, just general discounts on the homeowner's policy, I would say. Like,
Let's talk about that. How can you minimize your insurance premiums? So we're talking about bundling, car with your house, but are there some other things that can be done to reduce the insurance premium?
yeah, I mean, like making sure you're on paperless, for paperless discounts. Sometimes there's a paid in full discount for the home. Say we're paying like monthly or something. That could be a discount on there to lower it. It's more going to be about, is the company that you have the right company for you? Because one company might favor family of four in family, and then another company might favor a single family with one inhabitant. So it's really about making sure the policy, the price of the policy sounds typical and correct, because there's plenty of companies out there, and they're renewing you every year, and you're saying, hey, it was this when I started, and now it's this. This looks a little expensive. You just want to review it. Basically, if you are on top of your policy, you actually look at it, you're gonna notice an increase, and you're gonna say, I should maybe shop this around, or call your agent and have them shop it around for you if they're an independent agent.
Well, I just noticed with my own auto insurance, I noticed the premiums have crept up over the past couple of years, and I called them. I actually dropped my payments by almost $50 a month by just kind of adjusting a few things, which for me, I don't care about a larger deductible, which really affected, but definitely. And I think it's important to note that, even though you got insurance when you bought the house, your insurance agent isn't talking to you regularly. Maybe reach out to them and say, am I doing the right thing right now? Am I getting the best price I can get?
Exactly. And yeah, what you said about the deductible, that's huge as well. I mean, I'm a homeowner as well, and I'm comfortable with the risk of having a $2,500 deductible on my home. Some people, they want all the coverage. They don't want to have to pay anything out of pocket, but that is something that lowers my premium. and lowers customers that I quote with premium. And I usually give some options for deductibles, but yeah, that's another lever you could pull.
So my final question here is, so the bank's gonna tell you you need home insurance on your house when you buy a house. It's usually last minute. They don't tell you the minute you put the house under agreement. So you're scrambling around. What should home buyers and homeowners be looking for when they're comparing agencies and calling around? Are there specific things that might set someone apart from another?
Yeah, I mean, I guess responsiveness is a big thing. You're gonna take your gamble at whoever, 90% of the time you're gonna be looking it up online. If they have good reviews in agency, that's a good, a good place to start if you're looking. You know, so yeah, I mean, if you're looking online, yeah, I'd say reviews, responsiveness. You don't want to be trying to track these guys down. If you call our agency, I'll pick up and you're on the phone with a person already. How can I help? Some companies it's gonna be, they're gonna put you through the ringer to talk to somebody. So if
That's important to know. Just for example, my car insurance, I use Progressive. I had a kind of a smaller company before, kind of most people wouldn't recognize the name. So, but when something happens, like someone rear ends me or something like that, all I do is call the company and they take it from there. Might I pay a little bit more in premium? Probably, but the convenience and not having to deal with the hassle is more important to me than, saving $10 or $15. And that's fine. And I think that's, when it comes to any professional, whether it's a mortgage professional, an insurance professional, particularly because you can go online and deal with companies that aren't even have a facility in the state. I think it's important to deal with someone local. I mean, if things go wrong, I can come to your office and you have to deal with me. And that also makes you more accountable. Okay. Well, I think we've hit 24 minutes here, believe it or not. So let's wrap this up. I want to thank you. I think you've given us some great information about insuring a home. And, definitely reach out. The information for Sebastian will be down below so you can find him and have any questions answered or get a quote.